Hi, everyone. Paul and I just got off the scalability of sustainable aviation fuel event with Enviva Biomass, Gevo, and Hexas Biomass. Paul, what are your thoughts? Has your mind changed at all about the scalability and the limitations?
So everyone, I'm a deep skeptic on the scalability of sustainable aviation fuels. When a big part of the current process is converting used vegetable oil into aviation fuel, it doesn't point to anything dramatically increasing over the 1 gallon out of every 1,000 gallons that is currently sustainable. But we did between Jens, Wendy, and Chris. They made some pretty compelling arguments. McKenna, you know me, we have no patience here for people who make bullshit claims and make these extravagant claims. And frankly, they weren't doing that. They really weren't doing that. They were very pragmatic about how each part of what they do, whether it's specifically genetically modified crops from Wendy's standpoint, whether it's corn from Chris's standpoint, whether it's wood pellets from Jens's standpoint. They all agree there's no one size fits all encompassing solution, that they're all going to be parts of this part of the process. Very interesting. Look, the cost curve's kind of got to come down. The Inflation Reduction Act is a big deal for this. Jens did a very strong, not sugarcoating sort of the flaws in EU policy currently, which are, as we know, there are many. But I think he did a pretty good job at sort of explaining why European policy does the things it does. Look, we're going to get there. Maybe we're at a stage where the airline industry is never going to decarbonize, right? And is what it is. The world is. It's not like we can, even though the French have just banned short haul flights and Denmark's doing the same thing. We are going to fly, and we are going to fly more and more and more. And the amount of jet fuel that we will consume by 2050, it could double by 2050, right? Because large emerging economies, India, Brazil, they will get richer and they will fly more. China the Chinese will fly more. And Nigeria, if it has a population of 700 million people in the next 50 years, it will fly more. So these are all encompassing solutions. And I'm a skeptic about the growth of sustainable aviation fuels, but this was the most compelling case for growth in SAF that I've heard so far.
Yeah, and going into the discussion, the panelists already had an idea of your skepticism. So I think that's
I didn't really hide it.
Well, and just some numbers that were in the panel too. I thought it was so interesting what Chris was saying about only 1% of
1% of the corn crop
is actually used for human consumption. I was just like, I knew that, but I didn't know to what extent. And then it's a good figure to know that, SAFs are about 3 times more expensive than traditional fuels, which is honestly, about a little bit less than I thought. I thought it was going to be more 4 to 5.
Yeah, I think that number does vary depending on the type of drop-in fuel that you're using. And look, at the end of the day, flying is too cheap. If we need to be taking in pricing the amount of carbon into tickets, for example, the fact that I'm flying to London tonight, right? It's the flight is I'm flying on miles, so it's actually costing me nothing to be on this plane, right? And I think that the price of flying is particularly on short haul flights is too cheap. And the fact that there's no high speed rail across the United States is a travesty. And it's funny, there's a big proposal for a high speed railway line between Melbourne and Sydney, which would be the first high speed rail in Australia. We have to expand this stuff. We have to expand this stuff a lot, because again, if we can't decarbonize air travel, because we just don't have the capability of doing that, we have to find alternatives, and railway, high speed rail is one of those alternatives.
Oh yeah, and I hope to see those popping up everywhere, and there's so many of the same commute everyone's doing. But next week is a big week. We have sustainable finance, 3
Yes.
days in a row. Paul, I know we have a bunch of panels and a lot. You're moderating all of them. Can you just tell me, what do you think will be the most kind of controversial panel, or one that just, the speakers maybe aren't on the same page?
I think the whole thing around carbon accounting is going to be interesting. I think that there is this notion that carbon accounting is a be all and end all. Carbon accounting from the company standpoint has a massive valuation bubble, which is something which could come home to roost. IBM just shut down its carbon accounting business, which sort of says something. So I think that that's something which we can push people on. I think that the whole notion of, we're doing a bunch of VC panels, and I think the venture capital world is far too optimistic about the near-term growth prospects of every industry. We've had a nuclear winter in venture capital for everything except climate in the last 12 months. Climate's not going to be immune from this sort of stuff. Now, it doesn't mean these aren't great long-term investments, but to think that this is going to be an exponential growth path forward is sort of loses sight of the fact that financial markets are financial markets, and they ebb and flow. So these are all the stuff that we talked about in Climate 2023. I think are still relevant for whether it's battery panels or hard to abate sectors or whatever it is. There's going to be lots to push back on. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited, and everyone. Free event, go register right now, and or you'll be missing out. So
you'll be missing, what? You'll be missing out. So don't cry. If you don't see it, don't come crying to us.
Right? Exactly. Thank you, Paul. But yeah, that's it. And we'll see you guys next week.
Everyone have a good weekend.
Bye.